Hey book friends, I'm Erin and this is Erin Go Read. This is the Postscript Book Tag. This is going to be my end of the year hoorah for 2021. So the first question is, what was the oldest book that you read and what was the book that took you the longest to read? The longest book, did I say oldest book? What was the longest book you read? It was actually the first book that I read last year, which was The Crimson Petal and the White by Michel Faber. This is about a woman of, what did they call it in Gilmore Girls? A woman of questionable virtue. She's raised as such. Sugar is a 19-year-old prostitute she's grown up in her mother's house of prostitution, and she ends up meeting and falling in love with a man who comes in for some companionship, and it is the story basically of her life and of the changes that happen with her. Super good. It's like 900 pages or something. 892. Let's see, do we get to 900? Oh, that's frustrating. You read all that way, you only get to 894. But anyway, even though it's such a chunky book, it didn't read like a gigantic book. It read really fast, and I never felt like things were extraneous or like I couldn't wait for it to be over with. I just really enjoyed myself reading this book, and I want to read more from Michel Faber. So this was not the book that took me the longest to read, even though it was almost twice as long as the next book. So the book that actually took me the longest to read, I don't have great stats on this either because I did not do a good job of kind of keeping my Goodreads updated. I think I'll probably going to switch completely to Storygraph this year or this coming year. I've kind of one foot in there. But anyway, I believe that Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison took me the longest to read. It is close to 600 pages, like 580 pages, and it is, I wouldn't say dense. It's more dense than most other things that I read, and it was, an important work in Black history. So our nameless protagonist moves from the racist Deep South to Harlem in New York, and it's about his life and the continued bigotry that he sees there. I ended up watching a lot of other people's videos. I have a terrible memory, by the way, for books that I've read. I read this in like February or March, or maybe January or February last year, and I very much enjoyed reading it. I think I gave it 4 stars. I did end up watching a few other people's videos on them just because I knew there was so much in there that I wasn't getting. There's some really difficult parts to read, but it was, just really good, and I want to read more Ralph Ellison. A book outside my comfort zone is question number 2, and I would have to go with Get a Life, Danny Brown by Talia Hibbert. It's the first book in the Brown sisters romance novels. It's like contemporary romance, which is not my thing at all. I think was it a book of the month? I think it was a book of the month. It might have even been the last book of the month book that I got. And I was seeing lots of people talk about it and rave about it, and I was thinking, well, maybe I'll try this romance thing. It seems like more people are starting to read romance. It's becoming less of a fringe kind of thing. Not that romance is fringe, it's like the #1 selling thing, but as far as BookTube. And so I thought, okay, I'll give this one a shot. It seems like a safe bet, and I just didn't get it. The main character, Danny, has fibromyalgia, which I have fibromyalgia, so I appreciated kind of that rep. I liked can't remember his name, but I liked the male, love interest. I just, wasn't that into it. I just don't get, the love for it. I don't know. So outside my comfort zone and not my thing. So not completely dismissing romance, but I definitely haven't tried very hard. Haven't tried many romance books at all. Maybe historical romance would be more my thing, but this wasn't it. How many books did I reread? I think 3. For my book club, I reread Little Women and Anne of Green Gables, which were both rereads for me. And then I also reread, I think, number 5 in the Armand Gamache series, and it was just because I needed an audiobook to listen to, and whatever the next book I was on wasn't available, and so I basically just chose one that was available, and it happened to be number 5. So, which I couldn't tell you what it was about, which number it is, but I caught up with Louise Penny throughout the year. and I read the final book in that series, so I will probably be revisiting some of Louise Penny's. Maybe I'll just start over with Still Life pretty soon. It's not been the greatest year for audiobooks for me, with reading an audiobook for the first time. And the Louise Penny's Armand Gamache series are excellent on audiobook, especially when, is it Ralph Catcham does the narration. He's amazing. He unfortunately passed away. And so the last 3 or 4 books is by, I can't remember his name. He's an actor. He does a very good job. But Ralph Catcham is amazing. He is Armand Gamache. Oh, my favorite though. The question was my favorite reread. Probably Anne of Green Gables. It's such a part of like my heart, my childhood. I grew up watching the Megan Fellows, Anne of Green Gables, and Anne of Avonlea. And my dad used to read it to me as a kid before I went to bed. So Anne has a huge place in my heart. Question number 5 is a book I read for the first time that I want to reread, or I can't wait to reread. Did not bring them with me, but it is both of the T.J. Klune books, Under the Whispering Door, which I just finished. That was my last video, and The House in the Cerulean Sea. I just think I enjoyed both of those so much, and having just finished Under the Whispering Door, I already want to reread The House in the Cerulean Sea. Favorite short story or novella? Don't read a lot of either. I think the last novella I read was To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers. I'm pretty sure that was in 2020. So I literally read 2 short stories this morning so I could pick a favorite. So I recently got The Sister Who Ate Her Brothers by Jen Campbell. And I read the first 2 stories, The Sister Who Ate Her Brother and The Merman, The Souls Trapped in the Ocean. The Souls Trapped Under the Ocean. So I would say that of the 2 short stories I've read this year, that The Sister Who Ate Her Brothers was my favorite. The art in here is fantastic. It's much more kind of like childlike and cartoony than I was expecting, but I really, really love it. Let's see if I can find another. And there's some black and white too, so like where the pages are just kind of decorated there, but then there's even some more like illustration there as well. Also, it has a dust jacket, at least the American edition has a dust jacket, which I took off, but it has the naked hardback as well and a ribbon. So yes, my favorite of 2. I would expect anything from Jen Campbell to be my favorite anyway. Mass Appeal, a book I read that I would recommend to a large variety of readers. This one was hard for me. Few options. I would say Amari and the Night Brothers, as long as they are open to, adults are open to reading middle grade, but I just thought this was a fantastic story that anybody could love. But otherwise, I would say Hamnet, particularly if they're okay going a little bit more on the literary side of things, especially Shakespeare just being such a well-known figure. You don't have to be well-read in Shakespeare. I certainly am not, to be able to enjoy that story. But then also Leave the World Behind by Ruman Alaam. It is, I think it's classified as horror, but it's not horror like super scary slasher type horror, anything like that. It is more of a verges on dystopian, I would say, and it's more of a feeling of unease and discomfort that you have, but I think it's one of those like important books, it has a very strong message. Also, it's relatively short and it really moves along quickly, so I think that Leave the World Behind would actually be a really good mass appeal book. A book I liked, but that I would be hesitant to recommend, or I would only recommend it to certain people, and that would be My Dark Vanessa. One of my favorite books of the year, but major trigger warnings, and for sexual assault, for minors having sex with an adult, sexual assault, and some people just wouldn't be up for it, I think. So it's definitely something I would only recommend to somebody who I knew would be okay with that subject matter, and also who would be interested in kind of exploring a nuanced topic like that in can you be in love and the love affair, the relationship be a crime? Can it be love if one person is committing a crime and the other person is a victim? Is that person a victim? There's so much nuance that goes on in that, and I did a vlog on this, and I gave my, I think, somewhat unique perspective on that as someone who fell in love at 15 years old myself, as our main character is, I think, 16 when she falls in love with her teacher. And then finally, question number 9 is to reflect on your year as a whole as a content creator. I have not made very many videos. There are like months that went by that I didn't do anything. I've just been really inconsistent. So as far as that goes, like, not great, but I've been busy running my business. But one thing that I was really happy about was, it was actually like December 30th, I believe, of 2020, but other people were doing it early in 2021, was I created an original tag, the 2020 hindsight tag, or the hindsight's 2020 tag, something like that. And it was a 5-question tag about your personal history as a reader. And I just thought it was really interesting to hear other people's perspectives on that. And it was fun that, like, as many people did it as they did. If you still want to do it, it's there to be found. It was December 30th of 2020 is when I published that video, and it's still up if you are interested in doing it yourself. So I'm not going to tag anybody. Feel free to do this. Share with us your year, your postscript for 2021. Thank you for watching. See you around the tubes.